Hey, Sooner football fans. This is your Sooner football fans podcast. You got Terry and Rob here. Boom, Rob.
Boom, Terry.
And we're coming at you from the beautiful Podcast Palace in Norman, Oklahoma, where there was a big news conference today, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But while we got you listening to us right off the bat, make sure and subscribe to whatever you're listening to us on. Rob is still looking for stalkers. Nobody, I don't think, has taken him up on the stalking.
Not yet. No stalkers.
Okay. And as always, Sooner Football Fans Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Oklahoma.
But we do have eligibility left.
Yes, we do. And on the phone with us are our buddies from Twitter and everything else. If you're not reading their stuff, there's something wrong with you. It's some of the best stuff out there. They're the brothers Jennings. We got John and Rob Jennings on with us. Boomer, guys.
Boomer.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's been a pretty eventful season. I got to go down to the Orange Bowl and watch OU lose their fourth bowl game that I've seen. I've seen all four of the former BCS bowls. I've seen OU lose all four. Rob mercifully didn't go this time, so good for him. Yeah.
Yeah, well, first off, let's get to some important stuff real quick. How was the Metallica concert last night? Y'all didn't go?
I have a confession to make. I work 2 blocks from the BOK Center, and I went out to my garage, the garage I'm parking all day, and was getting ready to leave, and I thought, man, this crowd looks different than the people who work here all day. They're like, there's a Metallica concert tonight.
Well, you know, Bedenbaugh was there. He was tweeting out pictures from it. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess it was the biggest concert they've ever had at the BOK Center. Something like 19,000 people, I think is what it said, which is ridiculous because I've been in that place twice, and it doesn't seem like it would hold 19,000 people.
I didn't think it held that many, but
well, the floor was general admission, standing room only. So I guess that's how they cram a bunch of crazy metalheads in there. So anyway, John, back onto the Orange Bowl subject. Are you going to skip next year's bowl game? Because there's a trend you've got going. We talked about this last year, so
I know it's the thing I keep telling everyone is because I tell people that stat and they're shocked. It's like, how is that possible? Got to remind them there are probably a lot of OU fans with the exact same problem.
Oh yeah,
we go to a big bowl game, we lose. It's
I'm
still 1-1, so I'm good to
go. Well, yeah, this one was, honestly, me and Rob here when he got over to the house, we had some folks over here to watch it. Him and I both just kind of looked at each other and said, "How in the world are we going to win this game?" I didn't have much. I had hope, but not much faith. If that makes
it's that defense. I mean, we had all the faith in the world in the offense.
Yeah. And, Rob here actually left when we were down 21-0.
I did. I didn't want to.
He goes, I can't stay here and watch this in front of other people. So, and, then the Sooners turned around and made a game out of it there for a while.
Yep. It was once they figured out how to kind of get rid of the ball quickly, and you didn't just have Quinn Williams just dominating the game every play. Things went okay, and it's just that one guy. That's what I kept seeing on film was him just killing people. That doesn't even get to the other 5 stars they have everywhere else. It's just tough to deal with.
Yeah. And then, of course, I think, the following week was frustrating because, watching Clemson just put a beat down on them. The thing that stood out to me more than anything else on that game was with the Clemson defense was their tackling. And I don't know if it stood out so much because I watched, 13 games and saw bad tackling and this was just average tackling and it stood out. But those guys, it didn't matter. I mean, if it was one-on-one, they were wrapping up. They were bringing guys to the ground.
And that's a good way to start. But even before the play starts, they're disguising coverages, which we haven't seen OU do in so long.
Yeah.
You just see them line up, and you know exactly where the ball's going.
Well, I think part of the problem we couldn't, disguise our coverages because if we'd have disguised it too much, our own guys may not have known what was going on. So,
Yep.
I mean,
we would have disguised it from our own guys.
Yeah. So, but let's start off with Alex Grinch. I mean, I think all of us as Sooner fans are excited. We jokingly said, when it was first announced, really, you probably could have hired anybody, and we would have been excited because it was a change.
We're just ready for something else.
Yeah, ready. But this seems to be like a home run. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Grinch was the guy that I wanted from the beginning, ever since you saw last year what he did with Washington State, turning that program around. And being able to get him was just a home run hire. I'd kind of talked myself into Pete Golding when that stuff was seeming like it was going to happen, but Alex Grinch working against opposite of the high-powered offense of Washington State and holding Pac-12 offenses, which aren't as potent as Big 12 offenses, but tend to run like a similar scheme, is really promising for Oklahoma.
Yeah. Rob, what about you?
Well, I think I kind of agree. And, I read you all said something along the lines of this was Lincoln's first big decision or something.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe I got to kind of take issue with that, because here's where I disagree.
Okay.
Last year, after the Rose Bowl that you all went to and we went to, I felt like Lincoln had an opportunity to make the changes in. Like, it wasn't in the middle of the season.
Right.
And I really felt like maybe he gave away this season in a sense, because, we saw that second half how OU came storming back. They could have won that game. I mean, they beat the spread. So I did have to point that out. I wrote that down to make sure I brought that up.
Right.
But I'm excited. It's something different. If you look at his stats at Washington State, I'm kind of throwing out the Ohio State stuff because I don't know what to make of it. He was there 1 year, wasn't calling the defense. So they got better every year. And they, again, like Rob said, they played these kind of pass-heavy Pac-12 offenses that are kind of mimic what the Big 12 does.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I meant by, that little our saying, the things that Rob and I had talked about, was when it kind of falls back to 2 years ago when Lincoln got the job. And we had talked about early on in the podcast last year, and particularly me, was, he took the keys, he was handed the keys to a Ferrari. Okay. He didn't make any coaching changes. Everything just kind of stayed into place. And now, I said then was, I'm not really concerned with what Lincoln does in year 1 and 2. I'm more concerned with what he does in year 3, 4, and 5, because that's when he's going to get his players. What's he going to do when staff members retire, staff members leave? Because none of the coaches went anywhere, and they weren't going to go anywhere. Personally, I think, like what you guys were saying, is he should have made the defensive change last year. Why he didn't is beyond, I think, most of us fans. We just don't get it. But my thinking along in that is now we're going to see more of his head coaching abilities with, he made the decision to fire Mike, which every time you see him talk about it, you can tell it was gut-wrenching, because this was a friend. And the brother of one of his mentors. And then now we're seeing, okay, here I brought, he's brought Alex Grinch in. He's let him hire 2 assistants. So now we're really going to get to see, I think, how all this plays out. It's now more of his staff and more of his players as we move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you think it was riskier to go with what he had and keep Mike, or do you think what he's doing now is riskier, where he's hiring a brand new coach, new staff, whatever happens, he has to own it because he hired them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know, Rob, what do you think? I mean,
well, any change like that is risky, but we are not okay with number 67 ranked defense, which is what we had under Mike.
Right.
On average, probably in the 60s. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
So we need better than that. So I think you got to take the risk in this situation. That's just my opinion. I think you gotta strive for a top 10 defense to go along with a championship caliber offense. Because if we have a good defense the last couple of years, we've got 2 national championship trophies sitting in the Bear-Switzer Center now.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think there was any intention of him when he got the job. There was no reason to change. Everybody was used to everything. Now, the performance, of the defense in 2017, like Rob said, 67th, and he had to, his cards were on the table because this defense statistically was getting worse and worse every single game of 2018. It was. It was bad. You guys were just as frustrated as us. You're just like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And I think now it's just it's his first big decision. Well, I think second. Firing him is first, and then having to replace him.
So I think the good thing here, Terry, I'm sorry I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're good.
Is really we can't get any worse. And so if he can recruit and just make the defense that much better, I think the offense is still going to be a force to be reckoned with. So if the defense does climb back into the 60s or, hallelujah, up into the 50s, we're right back in the mix. Because how many teams, and you guys may disagree with this, are going to make the playoffs with the worst defense in the nation? Not many, I think.
Not many.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird, historical aberration when we look back at this period and say, what could have been.
Yeah.
It's
gut-wrenching. I mean, we've talked to you guys about it before, last year on the podcast and before the season started this year, and everybody was, hey, it can't get worse. We all believed the defense couldn't get worse. I mean, we ended up, I didn't look at them specifically, okay, because I didn't want to get sick until last week, the end of the season defense, rankings all the way across the board. Total defense, we were 114th. Rushing defense, we were 59th. Red zone defense, we were 126th. Passing, we were dead last. I mean, how we made the playoffs, how we only lost 2 games, I don't know. I mean, but, and now, there was a poster, well, there's nowhere to go but up from here. Well, we said that last year, but it has to get better, because like Rob just said a while ago, we're wasting championship offenses with bad defenses.
Well, yeah, and for reference on those numbers, 114 total defense sounds pretty bad. It sounds even worse when that number's out of 119.
Yeah.
it really can't drop anymore. It's right there. It's incredible.
Yeah, and we've had Rufus Alexander, on here, on the podcast last year, and talking to him, he vocalized it on radio. He was just, a lot of the former players were just livid about what was going on, and the sad thing is nobody could put their finger on what was wrong with our defense. I mean, tackling, coverage,
placement.
Placement, effort. I mean,
I think they were all wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that was the most frustrating thing, I think, all year long, is that nobody really knew what, at least I couldn't. I mean, you guys may have figured it out. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. They just did everything wrong.
Yep. Well, and I've been watching a few of Alex Grinch's games from back when he was with Washington State, and kind of one of the big differences I noticed between his defenses and the OU defense is they'll kind of give up some big plays, and you have to kind of swallow those and know they're going to happen. But they're coming as a result of him bringing lots of pressure,
right,
and a quarterback and receiver making a clutch play. It's not just someone beating a corner and a safety over the top. It's not we're sitting back only rushing 3 and just getting beat. And every single time they have a completion or a running back commit somewhere, at the end of the play, there's 6 Washington State guys that are trying to tackle him, which just aren't things we saw out of the Mike Stoops defense.
Right. And I like what he says, and I've watched a few videos, and I read some articles up in Washington about their defense, and that it's a downhill fast defense. It's an attacking style defense. Single gap coverage on or responsibility on the defensive line, so it's not complicated for the defensive line. And every defense, you say, well, every defense is supposed to be like this, but he puts an emphasis on, because of the high-powered offense that he had at Washington State and now he has at Oklahoma, our responsibility is to get the ball back into their hands as fast as possible, whether it be by turnovers and stops. And we're going to do that by playing downhill, aggressive, turnover-style defense, which just makes me giddy, because we haven't seen that in 10 years.
Yeah. I really like the word aggressive there. So.
Yeah. And he was able to do it at Washington State with 2- and 3-star athletes. And, now he's walking into, 4- and 5-star defenders. What's he going to be able to do with that type of talent?
That's another thing I noticed kind of when I watched them is when you watch them, it doesn't look like watching an Alabama defense where they're just dominating the game any time. They just consistently they limit the plays that you get, and you're going to get some 10 to 15 yards, but then they'll, come up with a tackle for loss, and then they won't give up 15-yard plays. It's just these little things, and then when they have to make a play, they tend to come up with it. However, that can totally flip on its head when you start having 4- and 5-star guys in every position. When you combine what they're already doing with the pre-snap motions on the line and the disguising coverages and gang tackling with having the same type of athletes Alabama has, that's a totally different ballgame.
Right. And I like, what he said today on this press conference was, we're not going to walk out of a practice when we're going ones-on-ones and going, well, we got the most, high-powered offense in the country. We should give up a whole bunch of big plays to them. That's not going to be acceptable coming out of practice, and that's what we've heard from our head coach, or, our last 2 head coaches, to be quite honest. I'm talking about Lincoln and Bob, and defensive coordinators it's tough to play defense in the Big 12. Well, if you keep saying that and your players, in my opinion, they keep hearing that, well, then it's like, well, we're not doing good because it's tough to play defense in the Big 12. Instead of, that's what I liked about what Grinch said was, it's not acceptable to walk out of a practice and go, well, they were supposed to score, have all these big plays on us. It's the best offense in the country. That's not an acceptable mentality for his defense, and I love that.
I just don't understand how, consistently Texas can have a top 25, top 30 defense. TCU can. And then you get schools like, there are some years where Kansas State beats us. I think last year, or 2017, Iowa State was like a top 25 defense. I just think when you put in our 4- and 5-star athletes into a scheme that works and these guys actually know how to tackle, I'm hopeful that that's the change we see as we can compete even at that level, because our offense is good enough to put us over the top.
Oh, yeah. And we were, again, back on statistics, we were the worst defense. I mean, Kansas played better defense than we did, for crying out loud.
Everybody did. Everybody that we played had a better defense than us, including Army.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm right with you guys. I fall right back on the TCU argument. Everybody says, it's hard to play, defense in the Big 12. Well, not for Gary Patterson. He's done it year in and year out. And that's what everybody always talks about. Well, when you're playing TCU, you're going to play a tough defense. Well, wait a minute. They play defense in the Big 12.
With lesser talent, I might add.
Yeah. So, these guys, I know it's new blood, but that's one of the things I like about what's right now. Grinch is saying all the right things. Is that we're not going to make excuses. We're going to expect to get turnovers. He said in the press conference today, they put it to math. 24 turnovers a season equals 9 wins. And so that's his goal, is a minimum of 24 turnovers, basically, is what he was saying.
I'd be giddy.
Yeah, and here we end up, again, 2 top 5. This year, I mean, what we have, 11 turnovers. Do
we have that many?
Something small like that.
Yeah. Huh. Imagine what this team would be if you got a defense, or the last 2 teams, if you had a defense that got 24 plus turnovers a season. God, the what ifs.
Yeah. I mean, when's the last time we actually got blown out? Because even, Texas beats by field goal the year before. Iowa State squeaked by. Georgia beat us every time. Alabama's the closest thing, and we still beat the spread.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things where you get that turnover or 2 in your direction for one. You win. I mean, we could have won all 4 of those games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you even look at the Alabama game. When we were down 28-0, after that we outscored them. What was it, 34-17?
34-17 down the stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, Alabama. It's crazy.
We shut them out in the third quarter. If you'd have just got 2 stops in the first half, or in the first quarter, not first half, for crying out loud, in the first quarter, it's a completely different game. And and it's not funny, but it's interesting that we say that about the Alabama game this year. If we'd have just had 2 stops in the first quarter, it's the same thing we said about Georgia last year. If we'd have just had 2 stops in the second half, we're sitting here in the same boat that we were 12 months ago. And I think the Sooner fans, we're excited, but I mean, we're at least these 2 sitting in here are tired of just seeing bad defense.
I'm cautiously optimistic because I feel like, Bob was at OU for forever, and some would argue maybe even a couple of years too long. I don't think Lincoln having these top 5 classes, and that's not a guaranteed thing that's going to keep happening. To me, this feels like those first 3 or 4 years when Bob came to OU. So I really I feel like this hire and this new staff kind of has to work, because we're not promised that this kind of hot streak on recruiting is going to continue. So, table the iron pod, and let's go win championships right now instead of planning down the road.
Yeah,
And beyond that, Alex Grinch is an extremely prestigious hire for defensive coordinator. He's fairly highly touted. He could have been the defensive coordinator at Ohio State and chose Oklahoma. If he can't succeed at OU, that's going to put a lot of doubt in the minds of whatever defensive coordinator comes next if he's not able to succeed.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. That, and it seems like, listening to Lincoln today and him talking, that there is an emphasis right now on getting these guys better and doing the right things and getting their mentality straight today. And Grinch said it today. He goes, it's a long road, but we don't have that much time. It's got to happen now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what drills they're able to do, what they're able to do with the guys, right now. How much. I know that spring practice, it's probably getting ready to kick off here, since we got the spring game on the 13th. But, I hope somebody has those tackle donuts out there rolling them around and just starting with the basics and being aggressive and fundamentally aggressive. You know what I mean? Not overly aggressive, just do the basic things fast, hard, right, and bring guys to the ground. So it doesn't seem like it would be that hard, but they haven't been able to do it for the last 3 or 4 years.
Just start with fundamentals. That's the first place to start.
Yeah. I mean, well, on the other side of the ball,
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. We'll give you guys the floor. What do you guys think about Jalen?
Well, I think it changes the trajectory of the 2019 season, because no doubt OU would have had an excellent season. I mean, I'm thinking at worst 3 or loss probably. I'm not too worried about the non-conference slate. So maybe it's closer to 2 or 3 losses. But there would have been a real quarterback battle, which we haven't had since Baker took it from Knight, which was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think immediately puts a high quality quarterback, someone who's got experience and toughness and is a good leader. Immediately, he's leading the team. So I think it makes 2019 a season where things can happen this year, as opposed to a minor rebuilding year. So I think I think we're playing for a playoff again if all goes to plan.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything you said there. And just kind of to crystallize that, the day before all this Jalen Hurts stuff was coming out, there were a bunch of national stories about Texas being back and being one of the possible teams for the playoffs next year. And my roommate was just aghast about all this writing saying Texas isn't back yet. I said, well, I'm not sure. I think they are positioned to be better than OU next year. If you win the Big 12, you got a real good shot at the playoffs. And as soon as we got Jalen Hurts in the room, that conversation changes for me.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if he's good enough to totally make OU a favorite yet, but I think it certainly puts that in the playoff right back in the conversation where Austin Kendall, when what he did when we saw him briefly, wasn't looking like he was going to be able to get that done, but Jalen Hurts gives you a shot at it.
I agree. I think Jalen will come in. I hope. I have no basis for any kind of real trust in it, but I think that he will be able to come in and pick this offense up, and that Lincoln Riley will mold him into the quarterback that, in the shoes of Baker and Kyler. And now I'm not saying he's as good as either one of them, but I'm saying there's a possibility that he is as good. Well, he's probably a better runner than Baker, but maybe not quite as good as Kyler.
Right.
So there may not be that much fall off quarterback-wise, which is still really, really good. No, we didn't lose a running back. I mean, we're reloading at the offensive line, but we did get the number one guy, and it's going to be strong. All the receivers, I don't think there's going to be a huge letdown offensively, and there can only be improvement on the defense.
Right.
So I think that next year's team has got to be as good as this year's team was.
Oh yeah, and I thought it was interesting because when he entered the portal and all the talk, and a lot of Sooner fans were like, we don't need him. We got Austin. Some Sooner fans, and I would say a lot, but we don't need him. We've got a quarterback room. We got the number one quarterback coming in, and then other ones were kind of like, me particularly were. I'm just not sure how good Austin Kendall was going to be. Mm-hmm. But then it all switched, and some people, and rightfully so, were like, what kind of message does this send to Austin that we don't trust, the coaching staff doesn't trust him? And then the next thing we know, Austin is in the transfer portal. When that happened, I kind of felt like Hurts was – something had been said somewhere, somehow, that it was Hurts. We were his top choice. Mm-hmm. And Lincoln said in the press conference he talked to all the quarterbacks. And
seemed like a no-brainer to me. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously.
I mean,
Hurts.
Hurts. I believe that Hurts came to Oklahoma, not just to be with a team that has an opportunity to play in the playoffs again, but Lincoln Riley is going to have in 2 years put 2 quarterbacks in the NFL that people said were not NFL caliber quarterbacks. And Baker, people still said that, and now what he broke the rookie passing record this year. And so Jalen's sitting here going, hey, this guy, he's got 2 Heisman Trophy winners, 2 playoff appearances. I'm bigger and stronger than both of them. What can he do for me? That's why I think he came to Oklahoma. And I think it was the right move for him. And I think Lincoln will make him better. Lincoln, I promise you, I think you guys will probably agree, he has already sat down in the last 7 days and been looking at how he's going to build this offense around this guy.
Yeah, and be able to utilize Jalen's strengths running the ball and rolling out is something that we saw a little bit this year with Kyler, but I think Jalen's even more likely to kind of want to get out and move, whereas Kyler liked to sit in the pocket and then scramble if he had to. Jalen almost is more comfortable moving a little bit side to side. And his development as a passer this year seemed like it got a lot of rave reviews from the press down in Alabama. I don't think we really had a sample size big enough in games to really know how much improvement he had.
Right.
But he really took a step this year from where he was as a freshman and sophomore, and then you give him to Lincoln for a spring and summer and fall before we could see him, I'm pretty comfortable that he'll be able to make the throws he needs to with the amount of room the receivers that Oklahoma get.
Oh, yeah. And, he's, as far as running, he's faster than Baker, bigger than both of them. Not near. I don't believe there's anybody other than Hollywood Brown that is as fast as Kyler. But he's also a physical runner. He's not going to slide very often unless Lincoln tells him to, I guess. But
which I would imagine Lincoln will probably tell him.
But if that's his strength, is lowering his shoulders at 6'2", 220 pounds.
You cannot make a living in the pros doing that.
No, but you can in college. But, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And then there's the talk out there is like, well, he got beat out by, a freshman, in the national championship game. And now, okay, well, if our incoming number one recruited quarterback beats him out, just think how much better that quarterback is. And probably Spencer Rattler's probably sitting around now kicking himself for not graduating early and being on campus today, because that's going to put him behind Jalen and going to make it a whole lot harder for him to get in the mix of it.
I think I actually think it's kind of it's almost a small blessing for Rattler because it gives him 1 year to not have the pressure on him. I don't think he's going to need like the redshirt year if he's as talented as we think he's going to be. But it doesn't get him thrown into it kind of the way Landon Jones was.
Right.
I think the person that it really, beyond Austin Kendall, who it really harms is Tanner Mordecai.
Right.
So he's going to be, a sophomore next year?
Yeah.
And he'll be going up against, the 5-star whiz kid who had a year in the system. I think he's the one who's getting squeezed out the most besides Austin Kendall.
Yeah. Yeah, what about Mordecai? I mean, he's a 3-star from Waco. What little bit we did see of him this year, he looked decent, but I mean, was I know that the coaching staff, I'm sure, told him, but I mean, was that recruitment to have a good solid backup behind, quarterbacks that Lincoln had, faith in that were going to be big, strong starters, or was it, or is he the quarterback that they expect him to, compete for that starting job? Is he good enough to be that?
He was an elite prospect. He's got a really powerful arm. I'm not sure he couldn't have beaten Kendall this year. I think everyone just assumed because Austin Kendall was the backup and was older, but I don't think it was a foregone conclusion at all that Austin Kendall would have been the starter.
Yeah, because I don't know, I don't know that much about Mordecai, other than just the little bit I've read. So, which again, that might be, it may be a surprise to all of us come, come next year.
I think it's going to be a battle. Obviously Jalen probably has, the mental step forward, but I think it'll still be a battle because Mordecai is not going to lay over. Those kids are competitive. They're going to battle all the way up to it. Now, if it comes, down to experience, then obviously Jalen Hurts has that.
Right.
So we'll see how it plays out. But Mordecai might wind up being his backup, and we're going to redshirt, Rattler. But
yeah,
we'll see.
Well,
and I watched a little bit of Mordecai's tapes from when he was in high school, and I really liked it. It seemed like a really, really good high school quarterback. You could tell he was really competitive. He had a big arm. He could make plays on the ground. Kind of did everything you wanted. But along with his recruitment, he actually committed after Spencer Rattler. And when Rattler was still, the whiz kid everyone knew was coming up.
Yeah.
So he knew he was going to have to come in. He was going to compete with Kyler Murray's first year, and then he had 1 year, and then he had this kid coming up behind him. So I think he knew what he was getting himself into and still chose Oklahoma over all the other offers he had and chose to stick it out and fight there. And I don't know. I like a guy who's willing to do that. That tells me something about his belief in himself and able to lead an offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, speaking of, that, with the portal stuff, we can talk about all the portal stuff if we want, or, what did y'all think about, all the hoopla, I guess, that came about from Oklahoma initially wanting to block his eligibility. They weren't trying to block his transfer. I think that's what everybody needs to understand. Oklahoma did not try to block his transfer. They tried to block him from being eligible initially to play his first year. What did you guys think about all that stuff?
I kind of did a 180 on it, because at first I thought, well, of course they're going to block him. He's going to the same conference, a team that we're going to play this year. Why should we let him go play there when he knows what we do, our playbook? He knows our tendencies, what our guys do. Like, that's just handing over intel. But I think I heard, I think it was Jake Trotter was comparing his transfer to Jalen Hurts, and basically pointed out, like, this is the same thing. These are both grad transfers who are immediately eligible because their first school let them. So I think it would have been a really bad luck to bring in Jalen Hurts, a grad transfer, who then caused Austin Kendall to transfer because he took his job, and then not let him go to the school he wanted to go to. So and the fact that school is starting right now. Like, if Austin Kendall wants to get into spring ball somewhere, he needs to enroll, like, right now, or else you can't, because school has started. So I think when they reverse course, I think they did the right thing. And honestly, I think having a decent West Virginia is probably good for OU, because they're not going to beat us the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And maybe they do go beat some other schools in the Big 12.
Yeah, I agree with that, except for, I think they probably should have just let him go, because just in the landscape of how college football is talked about nowadays, you're not really going to win that debate that you shouldn't let a guy go. It's just going to bring a bunch of negative press, aside from whether or not you think he should go or not, or be allowed to. But one of the common arguments about it was just how hypocritical Oklahoma was being after they got the Big 12 to change the transfer rules for Baker Mayfield a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And that one was frustrating, because, like, this is just clearly not the same situation.
Oh, yeah.
Baker was at Tech for 1 year. He didn't have a scholarship. And if you're not willing to give a guy a scholarship, it seems kind of fuzzy about whether they ever offered him a scholarship at all. But if you're not a scholarship athlete coming out of high school, I don't really understand why you should be held to more stringent transfer rules than, like, me as just a regular student would be held to, if you're not willing to pay for any of the education or things like that. Whereas Austin Kendall was in the system for 3 years, getting everything paid for on scholarship. That's just a little bit different commitment from both sides, it seems like to me.
Yeah. Well, and it is completely different than, like I said, than Baker, because he wasn't a scholarship athlete. So he had no responsibilities to Texas Tech. A scholarship athlete, Lincoln put it today on this press conference, it's similar, to being a pro athlete. You have a contract. You're obligated to that contract. If you want to get out of it, you can get out of it, but you're going to sit out a year. And Baker did not have that,
Well, I agree with those guys said. Essentially, we're just handing West Virginia our playbook,
right?
Because there's no chance that they're not going to say, okay, Austin, what's the wizard down there doing? What's Lincoln Riley doing offensively to beat everybody? And if anybody knows, Austin Kendall knows. He knows,
right.
When you guys line up in this defensive set, we're going to run this play, or that, we're going to read this guy, or however Lincoln's offense works. He's going to tell them that.
Right.
He's going to. There's just no doubt about it. He's not going to go, I got to stay true to Oklahoma. He's not going to do that.
No.
He's going to say, listen, when you guys do this, they're going to do that, and this works. And he's going to make them better just by knowing our playbook.
Yeah. Well, I really like what Lincoln said about it today. Was I think initially it was the block, the eligibility block was a knee-jerk reaction on Lincoln's part.
And I get it.
And then he later said, but it was just the right thing to do. He loves the kid. Mm-hmm. They had been talking. He said they talked that morning, and we're actually laughing about all the stories that were coming out about Oklahoma wanting to block the transfer. He didn't say particularly that, but he was like, we laughed and talked about all the misrepresentation that was going on. And, it sounds like Lincoln just went, hey, it's the right thing to do for the kid. Let him go. And my deal is with graduate transfers, they have lived up to their obligation to the university and to the program. If you've graduated and you want to go play somewhere else, they shouldn't be able to step in and say anything to you.
Yeah.
Now if you're a sophomore or a junior and, or like the Clemson quarterback this year didn't he put in the transfer portal early in the season? Didn't he do that? Or he announced he was going to transfer? I may be wrong. But
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but if you got beat out and you want to go somewhere else where you can get playing time, well, yeah, you got to sit out a year. You had an obligation to them. We're giving you the right. The NCAA has given these guys the right to transfer, but within the rules. If you transfer, you sit out a year. But if you graduated and then you have a year of eligibility left, you can go do what you want to do.
That's the situation. The Tate Martell kid from Ohio State, right? That went to Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his situation.
Yeah. But
You'll remember the year that Baker sat out and we played Texas Tech, and we didn't really, no one really knew who he was yet beyond that we played against him when he was on Texas Tech's roster.
Yeah.
And you just watched their coaches the entire game and was like picking off signs. And
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
it's that there's going to be there's kind of a free agency in college football now, and I don't think it's the worst thing. I think it's really interesting off-season fodder, and I think it's good for the athletes too. If you don't get to play at OU, you should get to go play somewhere else. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, if and my big thing is if your position coach leaves or the offensive coordinator leaves, I mean, a lot of these kids go to these schools because of the coaching staff, not just because of it's Oklahoma, it's Alabama, it's Texas or wherever, but they go because they've developed a relationship with the recruiting and the family and especially with what Oklahoma preaches is a family atmosphere. And now Coach so-and-so leaves and you go, man, he went to, he's going to be the head coach at Illinois or wherever. You go, man, I want to keep playing for that coach. I think the kid should have an opportunity to go if he's willing to sit out a year. And like I said, it's basically free agency. It's a fine line, and then I think they have to really, govern it really well. But these are kids; they're student athletes, and if it's really, if what the NCAA and all the schools say, it's all about the kids, all about the amateur athletes, then if they decide they want to transfer and you have the rules set for them to transfer, let them transfer. But again,
it just makes a better product. I mean, OU makes $100 million plus a year on these amateur athletes.
Yeah,
come on, let's put the best guys in the field. Like it's not as amateur as they make it out to be.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I think it's $127 million is what the Oklahoma football program is worth, and that's according to I think Forbes this year. So either came in 5th or 6th. And like I said, there's not I think that's probably more than what the U.S. Olympic Committee is worth if you really look at it. But it's you're right. It's amateur, but it's a high dollar.
You better believe it.
These guys aren't going out playing in rock fields, backyard football. I mean, they're playing in multi-million-dollar facilities that's kept up and ran by multi-million-dollars worth of donations. So,
and everyone's getting paid but them.
Yeah, getting paid a lot, and which is still, it's kind of funny, when I think it's kind of tongue in cheek, but when Kyler, signed his baseball contract, he was making more than Lincoln, and the university suddenly bumped Lincoln up a couple, couple $100,000. So he didn't have a football player, an amateur athlete making more money than he did. So they just bumped his salary up just a little bit. which I just thought that was hilarious that they did that. But, well, what are you guys expecting to see, through the off season? We just got done. Well, we're still not done with the New Wave 19 recruiting class. That's ended up number 3 right now. Do we even know the name of the 2020 recruiting class yet? I haven't heard. Have y'all heard?
It's 20 deep.
20 deep.
All right.
Okay. So, what are we going to see a spring game like what we saw last year? Or what was there, like 11 eyeballs that dropped that day?
Something like that.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And every one of those guys,
beyond,
and every one of those guys signed. They didn't lose a single one of them.
What day did we have it last year?
Well, we lost one of the wide receivers, right?
We lost I think
RJ.
we lost the Jarian Jones, the safety out of Mississippi, ended up not signing for 2019. And then there were a couple, like there was a grad transfer who committed OU and then decommitted 2 days later. It was real weird. And then Jalen Knighton just decommitted for the 2020 class. But
yeah, but he has
by and large, you got him.
It doesn't matter though, because everyone remembers oh my gosh, you had this historically great recruiting day. This is a cool place to go play.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and talking with the recruiting gurus out there, James Hale, and really I'll just stick with James Hale, who's been doing this forever. Okay, since the 70s. James said he had never ever seen anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He said on our podcast and talking to him off the pod, he goes, I have never seen that many kids just climbing over themselves wanting to commit to Oklahoma, and meant it. It wasn't like, yeah. I mean, just.
I got to be honest with you. I'm a little disappointed that Jalen Knighton decommitted because that kid is a stud.
Yeah. Well, he's a 2020 though, isn't he?
Right.
Yeah. So he's still got time.
Yeah.
But is there anybody in particular that you guys are looking at or hoping to get, or you guys like us? Until James or somebody else says these guys are good, we go, hey, this guy, we want this guy, because I don't have enough time to keep up with recruiting.
Are we talking for the 2019 class or the 2020 class?
2020 class.
Okay. Yeah, well, speaking of Jalen Knighton, he's obviously great and one of these top backs in the 2020 class. But it seems to be a relative consensus that the 2020 class at running back is one of the best ever across the country. I know he's involved with a lot of the guys at the top. One of the big names out there is Zachary Evans out of Galena North Shore in Houston, who has drawn some comparisons by a lot of people saying that he's the best high school running back they've seen since Adrian Peterson. Which doesn't mean he's Adrian Peterson, but if you're getting that name dropped in there, you're pretty special, it seems like.
Yeah.
Another one is Kendall Milton out of Clovis, California, who is another kind of change of pace back, kind of like Knighton, who I think is scheduled to be in Norman pretty quickly for one of the junior days. So that's two big guys that can make a big difference early on from the running back spot that are targeted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've not seen any news on those guys, so I'm going to have to
like I said,
Google it on up.
Yeah, well, that will take you 6 hours to figure out Google.
Yeah, but I'll still get it.
Well, the other big, our opinion here that we've been talking about, Rob and I have been sitting around talking about, is the offensive line. Bedenbaugh has got to fill 4 out of 5 spots to guys that, graduated and are going to be in the NFL. And two of them that declared early that are going to be in the NFL, which that seems like it'd be really easy to recruit big, strong guys to come. Hey, I just put 4 out of 5 guys, and let's face it, Creed Humphreys is going to be probably declaring after his junior year as well.
Probably.
But what do we got to place for that? That is going to be key. But, I mean, that's one of those the position coach altogether, and that line is – I seem to not worry about that line because of the type of coach that Bedenbaugh is.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm going to trust that he'll figure it out until proven otherwise. He's got all the studs recruiting guys coming in, so he's got a gallery of 4-stars to choose from. He can just plug a few of them in, and if one of them doesn't work, figure something else out. But he'll figure something out, and even if there's some early struggles, kind of like there were a little bit this year, even with all those guys returning, by the end of the year, I think that unit's going to be perfectly fine.
Well, and I like his style of coaching with the line. It's not necessarily, the best 2 or 3 players. He looks at the best unit, and it could be, people that we're not even thinking about. But when he puts those 5 guys together, and it gels and it runs right, which is why, last year after the spring game, there were some fans that were like, it was vanilla. I wasn't real happy with our offensive line. They didn't do this and this. It's like, well, first off, none of those guys had played with each other really. If you look at it, they split the offensive line up in 2 and 3 crews. So these 5 guys that played this year weren't playing, on the same red or white team last year. But Bedenbaugh has a knack of, putting not necessarily the best guy, but the best guy, 5 guys that work together, I guess is the best way to put it. Because there was a couple of times last year that, they were watching some playbacks that the offensive linemen ran into each other at the beginning of the year.
I mean, they're going to figure it out. He's a good coach. And I think last year we got Brandon Walker, the number 1 offensive lineman in the country that will start this year. So that's, now we're just filling 3 spots because that guy's apparently a stud. So I think we're going to be okay there. But
yeah,
I just think they're going to have enough time to figure it out. I don't think the non-conference schedule is all that challenging. I mean, I think Houston might be interesting, but obviously they lost their star player on defense, and I'm not sure we're going to have a really good game until Texas, which, as OU fans know, is halfway through the season.
Yeah. So
he's got half the season to figure it out, figure out who gels well together, all that stuff. So they won't be as good as they were last year, but I think that they will live up to previous classes at OU.
Yeah.
Well, and if they have any trouble figuring it out early, that just lends more credence to the idea that Jalen Hurts is critical, because if they have some early trouble, he's going to be able to get outside the pocket and make some plays that maybe Austin Kendall might not have. And his running ability gives you a little bit more margin for error than he had.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep. Well, I guarantee you, Brecken Hager is probably still having nightmares about being brutally attacked,
manhandled
all day long in the
Big 12
championship game. Did you guys see all the videos that people put together?
Yeah, it seemed like every offensive lineman had to have their turn taking him out.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yeah, and some of it was just flat out blocking. I mean, they just put him on his back. Other of it, it was, this guy's a loudmouth, and every time he hit the ground, there was 300 pounds flopping on him. Mm-hmm. Whether he tripped and fell or what, somebody was jumping on top of it. And then he goes out and wusses out and gets his hair cut. He said he wouldn't get a haircut. I know he's gone, but said he wouldn't get a haircut until Texas won the Big 12.
Honestly, he needed to get cut because he looked like a female. But
a little bit. And then he had Matthew McConaughey cut it for him.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. There was a picture of McConaughey holding the locks, standing by. And speaking of McConaughey, off of football, did you see the OU basketball game yesterday?
That broadcast was brutal.
Yeah, but he's Matthew McConaughey did what? Was he the honorary assistant coach?
I don't know.
He was in
yelling at guys on the bench to get up.
Yeah, he was in a burnt orange suit. Sitting
all right.
Yeah, sitting on the edge. And he was putting his hands in on the let's go, the team chant thing, and then he was telling the guys to get up to cheer. That was just weird.
Does he think he's helping them?
I don't.
I'm pretty sure if I'm the coach, I'm like, listen, you need to go sit down.
Well, I mean, what'd you guys think? Was that just like y'all the same as us? I'm sure. That's just weird. That was uncomfortable watching it.
It was just weird watching, and the camera showed him, I swear, more than any player who was actually in the game, which was weird. But it did bring me a lot of comfort watching that, knowing that the Longhorn Network isn't selling any commercial ad space, because I heard a lot about Longhorn Legends and the women's basketball coaches show.
Oh, really?
I can only hear those ads so many more times. Jeez.
Well, I heard it was really bad that people were like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot take this anymore."
Yeah, but when I see that, when I see things like that, it just. What do you think Bob Stoops or Barry Switzer or even Lincoln would do if JR would come up to him, or get out there with the players and start, pointing stuff out? Do you think they would?
Yes, I do.
I think his sideline privileges would be revoked.
They'd say, "Listen, you need to go sit down."
In my opinion, JR, is much more popular than
McConaughey.
No, in Oklahoma, he is.
Oh well.
Yeah, and that's all that matters. So, yeah, I didn't. I didn't watch a lot of the game, but it was like you guys said on Twitter. It was horrible that the calling was horrible, and why you would have a conference game on the Longhorn Network seems stupid to me.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I guess you all missed out on the 6-minute long Sam Ellinger most awkward interview of all time.
Yeah, no, I heard about it, but I didn't see it.
There was just silence the whole time, and they're trying to pump up everybody so much, and it's incredible they're still able to broadcast games.
Well, what was it? Just a TV, or was it piped through the?
Yeah, it was TV. It was one of those things like they did it with Baker last year at OU, but on a national broadcast where they have him come down and sit between the announcers and talk to him. But they were it was one of those two where they showed the game in one of those little tiny windows and just focusing on two broadcasters and Sam Ellinger staring awkwardly at each other. So.
All right. Sam Ellinger is a little bit odd looking to me anyway, and I won't even. Yeah. I won't even. Yeah, I will, because I hate Texas. He still looks like he looks like the adult version of the banjo player in Deliverance to me. If y'all haven't seen, have y'all seen Deliverance? Because you guys are like,
nope. I've seen the meme, so I know what you're talking
about. You guys have never seen Deliverance?
Oh boy.
You're a lot younger than us, I know, but
yeah,
I don't watch a lot of movies to begin with, let alone older things.
No, okay.
We watch old OU football games on YouTube in our spare time. That's our movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to watch that.
Yeah, you don't want to watch it. I was just, if you ever do come across it, just watch it, but don't go out of your way.
You know what's funny? Wasn't there a car commercial that these guys were unloading? They started hearing the band.
Yeah.
they loaded back up and took off. I'm like, there's a whole generation of kids out there that have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that does not understand that. Well, guys, anything that you guys want to bring up that you got coming, or that you guys want to talk about real quick?
Well, I want to congratulate you guys on your 1-year anniversary, birthday, whatever we call it. I think it was around this time last year we first talked to you all. So
yeah.
Great first year. You guys got a huge Facebook following and doing good things. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's something that we
still enjoying it.
Enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's still odd to us that this idea that we had, which is just do what we always do, except stick a microphone in our face. Because that's what me and Rob do all the time anyway, when we just sit around and talk about OU football.
Yeah.
And people seem to like it, and we appreciate everybody who does. I mean, it's been a lot of fun.
I thought it was going to make me prettier, but I seem to be about the same, or I don't know, maybe a little uglier.
Well, hey, you did put out that you were looking for stalkers, and nobody's taking you up on it.
You're really ugly when you don't get any stalkers, right?
When you ask for them and they don't do it.
These guys probably think we're crazy.
Yeah. But what do you guys got coming up? By the way, I love the new layout of your website, the new logo with the wagons. That's not that you had a bad one before. You know, it's I like it. You know, so you know, and you guys were one of the first folks that we reached out to. You know, I'd been, you know, periodically reading your stuff and you know, started reading it a little bit more when we started the podcast and reached out, and we appreciate you guys being one of the first and continuing to go along with us. But what do you guys have coming up that you're looking at with your website and your blogs and things?
Well, 2018 was a good season for us. We doubled our traffic from the year before, so we're a lot of people reading us and sharing our content, and I appreciate that. So thank you to everyone. The biggest thing that if you're a Bennie and Buds fan and want to get more of it, I would recommend you go to facebook.com/Bennie and Buds and just like our page. It's another way to see it besides Twitter, or just, you know, going to our website each day. So it'll let you know each time there's a new article coming out. We are going into the off season like all of you all, so hopefully I'll be writing a lot less. I didn't do that last year. I kept just charging through the cold winter months, and I think I'm going to try to recharge this year. Rob may do the same, but we will have stuff up for February signing day, for the spring game, and then, you know, we'll keep writing through the summer leading up to the kickoff against Houston.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's, you know, it's funny you say that, you know, take time off, because Rob and I, we actually just kind of we were going to take a little bit longer off, but stuff. Lincoln Riley has done a, you know, magnificent job of keeping Oklahoma in the spotlight during the off season. He did it last year, and he's doing it again this year. I mean, you know, you lose the, you know, lose again in the playoffs, and now, you know, immediately he replaces the defensive coordinators, building a defensive staff, the Jalen Hurts thing. It's hard to, when you got a coach as active as what this guy is, always doing stuff, and always, it seems like he's trying to keep the Oklahoma football brand out there in front of everybody 24/7. He's doing a good job of it.
Yeah, it's working. There's always a story. There's always a conversation, which for me, I'm a football guy. I like other sports. I don't follow them nearly as much as I do OU football. I'm more interested in OU football in April than I am in other sports that are in season in April.
Right.
So it's great. I mean, I love the 24/7 hour nature of it, and that OU is one of the top programs right now. So I agree.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think that's going to be it. We appreciate it as always. You're welcome anytime to come on and chat with us. If you guys are going to be around for the spring game, we're trying to work on some stuff for the spring game again, a tailgate type thing, and working some stuff out with Jamel Holloway again, and doing some stuff for those kids. So, we appreciated you being on again. And Rob, do you have anything else, buddy?
I'm all good.
You're all good. You got your Rob, while ago, right before you guys got on, goes, grocery shopping done. He just ordered all of his food on Walmart.com. So there's our plug. So everybody go check out John and Rob's website, BennieandBuds.com. Make sure it's always great reading. You can sign up to, I think, to get yeah, you can, because I get them. The notices when their new blogs drop. And
very informative.
Very informative, a lot of fun to read. But we appreciate it, guys, and we'll see you later. Boomer, Rob, and John.
Boomer.
Boomer, Rob.
Boomer, Jerry.
Thanks for listening to the Sooner Football Fans Podcast. Hit the subscribe button right now on whatever app you're listening to download every episode as they come out. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook and on YouTube. Boomer Sooner.